The first envelope arrived in late autumn, slipped through the parish door as the bells tolled for evening prayer. Father Michael's hands trembled as he opened it, expecting another request for food or shelter. Instead, he found a page written in delicate, uneven English. "I do not know why I write to you, but I feel God wants me to. My name is Layla. I am far from you, but I see light in your words." He folded the letter quickly, tucking it into the pocket of his cassock, before the altar boys noticed. Yet that night, as he sat alone in his quarters, he read it again and again. Each line struck chords he had long buried: gentleness, loneliness, the whisper of longing he had spent decades silencing. Days passed. He prayed for the strength to ignore her, but when the second letter arrived, his resolve faltered. This one was longer, laced with fragments of poetry and sorrow. She spoke of being trapped between two worlds, her faith heavy, her heart restless. Michael's pen hovered above the paper for hours before he finally wrote back. His reply was cautious, measured in tone, but his pulse betrayed him. Weeks blurred into months. The exchange deepened. Her handwriting grew steadier, her words more intimate. She called him her confessor without face, the one who could understand her doubts. He warned himself he was offering guidance, nothing more. Yet when he sealed each letter, there was a heat in his chest he could not name. Then came the first phone call. The line crackled with distance, her voice soft, almost breaking. "Father, I should not disturb you, but I needed to hear someone who does not lie to me." He swallowed, gripping the receiver tighter. "You're not disturbing me. Speak." Her laughter was quiet, fragile, like glass about to shatter. In that sound he felt both danger and salvation. Night after night, their conversations grew longer. She confessed her fears of loneliness, her distrust of those around her, the ache of carrying secrets. He confessed nothing, yet in the silence between her words, his own hunger grew. For the first time in years he dreaded the dawn because it meant silence from her. The parish began to notice his absence of mind. His sermons faltered, his eyes lingered too long on shadows. Father Brennan, his superior, confronted him after Mass. "Michael, your heart is wandering. Whatever burden you carry, you must lay it down." Michael forced a smile, promising to rest, but his mind was already with her voice echoing through the wires. The decision came quietly. One morning he looked out at the rain-stained glass, the pews empty, and felt nothing but hollowness. The letters in his drawer, bundled in ribbon, seemed to breathe against the wood. He booked a flight to Turkey under the pretense of a retreat, avoiding questions with practiced calm. On the night before departure, Layla's final call came. "You will come?" she whispered. "Yes," he said, voice steady though his soul shook. "I will find you." He left at dawn, cassock folded neatly in his suitcase, crucifix heavy around his neck, and a secret burning brighter than any prayer he had ever spoken. The plane descended over the Bosphorus, the city sprawling like a labyrinth of stone and light. Michael pressed his forehead to the window, the crucifix beneath his shirt cold against his skin. He had told himself this journey was pilgrimage, yet the truth pulsed with every beat of his heart. He was here for her. The streets of Istanbul overwhelmed him at first. Call to prayer rising from distant minarets, the scent of roasted chestnuts, the surge of bodies weaving through bazaars. He moved through it all with the eyes of a stranger, clutching the small slip of paper where Layla had scrawled a meeting place. It was a quiet cafe, tucked between narrow alleys. He stepped inside, the dim light trembling against cracked walls. His eyes searched the room until they found her. She sat near the window, her head covered loosely with a scarf, eyes downcast at a cup she had not touched. For a moment he froze. Months of letters and voices had not prepared him for the flesh-and-blood presence of Layla. She looked up, and in her gaze he felt the weight of every vow he was breaking. "Father Michael?" Her voice was low, carrying both question and certainty. He nodded, sitting across from her. "You're real," he whispered before he could stop himself. Her lips curved, not quite a smile. "And you came?" Their conversation unfolded cautiously, each word like stepping stones across a river of unspoken fear. She spoke of loneliness, of feeling trapped between duty to her family and hunger for something more. He listened, leaning closer, convinced that in her story lay his own redemption. As dusk fell, they walked along the water. The city glimmered in gold and fire, seagulls circling above. She kept her eyes on the horizon. "You should not have come," she murmured. "Then, why ask me?" Her silence stretched, broken only by the sound of waves against stone. Finally, she said, "Because I wanted to believe someone would." That night he returned to his modest hotel, unable to sleep. Every glance, every flicker of her hand across the table haunted him. He had crossed a threshold that could not be undone. Days bled into one another. He met her in hidden corners, walking through markets where voices drowned their whispers. They shared tea in back rooms, words spilling like confessions. When she laughed, it was fleeting, shadowed by something unsaid. Michael began to sense the caution in her movements. Sometimes she checked the street before speaking. Once when he touched her hand, she recoiled, not from him, but from the world watching. On the seventh night, as they sat beneath lanterns, swaying in the evening breeze, she leaned closer. "There is a place, away from this noise," she said. "It belonged to my father, by the sea." He hesitated, yet her eyes were steady, her voice a tether, pulling him deeper. "Come with me tomorrow. Stay where no one will find us." Michael felt the last threads of reason unravel. He nodded, sealing his fate. The city lights dimmed behind him, and before him stretched a path into shadows he could no longer refuse. The road wound along the coast, narrow and uneven, the sea stretching dark and endless on one side, jagged hills rising on the other. Layla sat beside Michael in the taxi, her silence heavy, her scarf pulled tighter against the wind that leaked through cracked windows. He studied her profile, searching for signs of hesitation, but her face revealed nothing. The house stood apart from the village, a pale shell of stone and wood at the edge of the cliffs. Its shutters creaked, salt-stained and weary. Layla led him through a rusted gate, her fingers brushing against the iron latch, as though reluctant to touch it. "This was my father's," she said, pushing the door open. "He left it to me when he died. No one comes here now." Inside, the air was cool and faintly damp, smelling of sea and dust. Furniture covered in white cloth loomed like ghosts in the half-light. Michael followed her into a room with wide windows overlooking the shore. The glass was cracked, but the view was endless, the horizon bleeding into a fading sun. "You will be safe here," Layla said, her voice softer now. He set his bag down, the crucifix glinting briefly as it slipped from his shirt. She noticed, but said nothing. Days passed in strange rhythm. They walked the cliffs together, shared simple meals she prepared in silence, and at night they sat in the dim parlor, speaking in low voices as the wind pressed against the shutters. Michael found himself confessing things he had never dared to speak aloud, the loneliness of his parish rooms, the suffocation of vows he had once carried with pride, the endless hunger to be seen not as a priest, but as a man. Layla listened, her eyes dark pools that offered no judgment. Yet shadows stirred in the house. Sometimes he woke to footsteps echoing faintly in the halls, though Layla swore no one else was near. A door left ajar that he remembered closing. A chair slightly moved. Once, while standing at the window, he thought he saw a figure on the cliffs watching them, motionless against the grey sky. "Did you see someone?" he asked. Layla's gaze followed his, but her answer came too quickly. "It's only fishermen. They pass here often." Still, unease grew. One evening, as he explored the upstairs rooms, Michael found a locked chest beneath a bed. The wood was scarred, the lock rusted, but intact. When he mentioned it, Layla stiffened. "It holds things that belong to the past," she said sharply. "Leave it." Her tone startled him, so unlike the fragile softness she usually carried. He pressed no further, but the image of the chest gnawed at him. At night, when she drifted into restless sleep, he sat awake, listening to the groans of the old house, the whispers of the sea, the faint hum of her breath. The crucifix lay heavy against his chest, as though weighing judgment. Still, desire bound him to her, stronger than guilt. Every glance, every touch of her hand against his, became both wound and balm. One night, after silence had stretched too long, he whispered, "Layla, what are you afraid of?" Her eyes glistened in the lamplight, her lips trembling before she spoke. Not everything is mine to answer. Some things are already decided. The words settled between them like ash. Michael turned toward the window. Beyond the glass, in the far distance, a shadow lingered once more at the cliff's edge, vanishing when he blinked. The house, once refuge, now felt like a cage. And still he stayed. The storm arrived without warning, hammering the cliffs with waves that seemed to shake the house to its foundations. Michael sat by the window, watching the sea thrash in fury, when the thought of the locked chest returned like a whisper he could no longer ignore. Layla had gone to the village for supplies. The moment her footsteps faded beyond the gate, he rose. Upstairs, the room creaked beneath the storm's weight. He knelt before the chest, the lock brittle under his hands. With the edge of a rusted poker, he forced it open. Inside, among faded linens, he found papers sealed in a folder. His breath faltered as he unfolded them. An official marriage certificate, Layla's name inscribed in bold ink, and beside it, the name of a man he had never heard, dated only 3 years earlier. Michael sank back against the bed, the crucifix at his chest biting into his skin. The letters they had exchanged, the promises whispered across distance, replayed like cruel echoes. She had spoken of emptiness, of betrayal by the world. She had never spoken of this. When she returned, soaked from the rain, he confronted her. "Layla," he began, holding the paper in shaking hands. "What is this?" Her eyes widened, then darkened. She set the basket down with deliberate calm. "It is nothing that concerns you." "Nothing?" His voice cracked. "You told me you were alone." "I said I was unloved," she snapped, her accent sharpening. "There is a difference." The storm roared louder, thunder shaking the walls. Michael stepped closer, his voice breaking between anguish and fury. "You brought me here under falsehoods. You made me believe." Her hand shot up, silencing him. "I made you believe what you wanted. You wanted to hear of loneliness so you could cure it. You wanted to imagine yourself savior. Do not blame me for the lie you wrote in your own heart." Her words cut sharper than the wind outside. He staggered back, clutching the crucifix as if it might anchor him. That night, silence smothered the house. Layla retreated to her room, and Michael paced the parlor, thoughts fractured. The storm subsided by dawn, but his turmoil did not. He left the house, walking the narrow streets of Izmir until he reached the crowded bazaar. There, as he lingered near a stall, he felt it, the weight of eyes upon him. Turning, he caught sight of a man watching, his stance rigid, his gaze unflinching. The stranger followed at a distance, as Michael turned down alleys, the press of bodies thinning until they stood almost alone. The man approached, his face hard, voice rough with broken English. "Go home, priest. Leave this place before we bury you with your cross." Michael froze, breath short, unable to answer. The man's stare lingered like steel before he vanished into the maze of streets, leaving only the echo of his warning. When Michael returned to the house, Layla stood waiting at the gate. Her face revealed nothing, but her eyes held something dangerous, knowledge, perhaps, or fear. Michael felt the weight of betrayal close in, the walls of the house now pressing like stone. And yet, despite everything, he could not leave her. The days after the warning blurred into a haze of suspicion. Michael moved through the house as if chased by unseen eyes. Layla's presence, once balm, now felt like a riddle tightening around his throat. Every glance from her was weighted, every silence filled with words unsaid. One evening he stood at the window, clutching his crucifix. "I was told to leave," he said, his voice shaking. "Someone followed me, Layla. They knew who I was. They threatened me." She did not look up from the teapot she poured. "Then perhaps you should leave." The words struck like a knife. "Is that what you want? For me to go?" She finally lifted her gaze, her eyes unreadable. "What I want does not matter. What matters is survival. And you came here, thinking love would save us. But love cannot protect us from truth." He stepped closer, his voice breaking with desperation. "I left everything for you. My vows, my parish, my God. I abandoned it all because you asked me to believe in you." Her lips trembled, but her tone hardened. "You abandoned nothing for me. You fled because you were already lost. The silence between them swelled until it felt like the house itself groaned beneath it. Michael's knees weakened. He sank into the chair, covering his face with trembling hands. "Layla," he whispered, "I cannot go back. Not now. You must choose me. Tell me you will choose me." She crossed the room slowly, placing her hand on his shoulder. For a moment her touch was tender, almost merciful. Then her voice, low and steady, "I do not belong to you. I belong to no one." The words shattered him. His grief erupted into anger. He rose, slamming his hand against the table. "You lie. You make me believe, then tear it away. You cannot keep me here like this, half in light, half in shadow." Her face flickered with both fear and defiance. "And what will you do, Father? Preach me into obedience? You are no savior here. You are just a man weak, desperate, and hunted." The confrontation spiraled. He accused her of deception. She threw back his hypocrisy. Voices rose, echoing through the hollow rooms. At last, she spat the words that ended his plea. "My husband is not dead. He knows you are here. And if you do not leave, it is not just your soul you will lose." Michael staggered back as though struck. The crucifix at his neck swayed violently with his ragged breath. For the first time he felt the true weight of the danger, honor, faith, vengeance converging upon him. That night he retreated to the parlor, exhausted, trembling. He opened his diary, writing by candlelight, words frantic and jagged. "If this is to be my end, let God forgive what I have done in his name. Let him forgive me for loving where I should not love." Upstairs, footsteps moved. He heard Layla pacing, the creak of the floorboards carrying like accusations through the silence. By dawn, Michael had resolved one thing. He would confront the man himself, demand truth, demand Layla, demand freedom from the web suffocating him. He rehearsed words like sermons, desperate for redemption. But when he stepped outside the next morning, the path was empty, the sea restless. Layla stood at the threshold, her face pale, her voice low. "You should not leave today. Not now." Michael's pulse hammered. The choice was no longer his. The storm was here. The days bled together, time collapsing into silence. Michael had not been seen in the parish he abandoned, nor in the village that whispered of a foreign priest living with a Muslim woman by the sea. 80 days passed before anyone dared to speak his name aloud. Layla was the first to draw attention. She appeared at the local police post, her eyes swollen from weeping, her voice trembling. "My friend, he is missing," she said in halting Turkish. He did not return from walking near the cliffs. The officers exchanged glances. They had seen her before, the woman who lived in the abandoned house with the foreigner. Rumors already swirled: sin, betrayal, dishonor. A search was ordered. Men combed the shoreline, shouting into the wind. Fishermen scanned the waters, their nets dragging across the waves. But no body surfaced, no trace of the priest was found. Layla repeated her story. He left for a walk and never returned. Each retelling shifted slightly. The time, the direction, the reason. The inconsistencies tangled like knots. Still, there was no evidence to hold her. Then on the 81st morning, a fisherman dragged in something from the sea. Tangled in his net, slick with brine and seaweed, was a wooden crucifix. Its edges were scorched, one side bound with frayed rope. The fisherman carried it ashore in silence, laying it on the stones as though it were a body. Word spread quickly. Crowds gathered to see the relic, whispering of curses, of punishment, of a love that had angered both God and men. When police questioned Layla again, her tears returned. But her voice was colder. "He carried it always," she admitted. "Maybe the sea wanted it back." The investigators pressed her. Did she know where he went? Did her husband know of Michael? Did she understand the threat this affair placed upon them? Layla folded her hands, her eyes fixed on the crucifix lying in evidence. "I do not know," she said. "He was a man of God. God alone knows what happened." The husband was summoned, questioned in dark corners of the station. His rage was barely hidden, his silence louder than any confession. Neighbors whispered of honor, of vengeance, of a shame that could only be cleansed by blood. Yet no proof surfaced. As weeks passed, the case unraveled. Some believed Michael had drowned, taken by the sea. Others swore Layla's husband had buried him where no one would ever find him. A few whispered that Layla herself had pushed him into the waves when he demanded too much. But the crucifix, scorched, bound, and returned by the water, remained the only artifact. It lay in the evidence room, heavy with meaning, a symbol without explanation. Layla vanished soon after. She was last seen boarding a bus at dawn, a single suitcase in hand, her scarf pulled low. No one stopped her. No one asked where she went. The case remained open but hollow, an echo without answer, and in the silence left behind, the crucifix stood as testimony, not of faith but of a love that consumed and destroyed. The investigation unraveled in contradictions. Michael's diary spoke of despair, but Layla's answers dissolved into smoke. Her husband's silence was heavier than confession. The crucifix, scorched, bound, and retrieved from the sea, remained the only tangible piece of him. Neighbors whispered of betrayal, of honor, of a priest who loved too recklessly. Some swore he drowned, others claimed vengeance buried him where no tide could reach. Layla vanished into the vastness of cities. Hassan lingered in silence, and the house by the cliffs stood empty once more. Inspector Demir closed the file, unresolved but unforgettable. He knew truth was buried, not lost, guarded by sea and silence. The crucifix lingered in evidence, a relic stripped of faith and stained by forbidden love. And the story lived only in whispers, where answers no longer mattered.